WOC Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, just about 5 minutes after 10 o'clock, and our next guest has a book on Amazon that is getting all kinds of rave reviews. 5 stars. Look at that, Robin. 55 reviews, 5 stars. Wow.
Yeah.
The book is called Raising the Bottom, Making Mindful Choices in a Drinking Culture. And we're at that time of the year when you're going to go to a lot of different things where somebody's going to say, what would you like to drink?
Exactly.
What would you like to drink?
Exactly.
Lisa Boucher is on the phone. She's the author of the book. She's a registered nurse. For the past 28 years, she has worked with women to overcome alcoholism, live better lives, and become better parents. She has also trained polo horses. Now,
that's pretty cool.
That sounds like 2 different things right there.
That's her release.
That's her release, yeah. Raising the Bottom is the name of the book. Again, Making Mindful Choices in a Drinking Culture. Lisa Boucher, good morning. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I love the topic. I'm not a drinker, but I used to play music in bars, and so I would see a lot of drinkers. And I came to the conclusion there's 2 types, and then maybe you can help me. Maybe I'm a bad observer of people, but there were people who didn't do it right, and there were people who did do it right. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. I mean, not everyone who drinks has a problem, and some people can do it successfully and moderately, and they can have a lot of fun with it, and no harm, no foul. And then there's others that just don't have any stop signs in their brain, and it's just pedal to the metal, and it's all bad. So, and then there's people that are in between, and that's kind of where I was when I stopped, because, alcoholism or alcohol problems, it's on like a bell curve. So it's just a matter of, I saw myself sliding into where it was going to be extremely problematic, and I chose to stop, because I grew up with an alcoholic mother who did not stop. And so I had quite a visual and an experience of what that can look like. And it's really bad. So.
I told you that I don't drink, but I'm going to be honest. I think the reason I didn't start drinking is because I have that same personality, that worse than you. If I was drinking, I'd probably be a horrible drunk. Because I'll open up a bag of Oreos and they're all gone. I don't have a stop sign.
Well, and a lot of it is the sugar. I would say you can tell with kids as young as 7 years old who is going to lean toward addiction. Look at their sugar intake. Kids that cannot get enough sugar are already physiologically setting themselves up, or maybe they're already genetically predisposed toward addiction, because alcohol turns to sugar. And so kids will self-medicate with sugar when they can't get enough of it, because it changes the way they feel temporarily. And that's why most people drink, and we like the effect, and I wanted to change the way I felt. And that's for 99.9% of people that end up with an alcohol problem. It's to change the way we feel. It becomes a coping mechanism as opposed to sitting with those feelings that can be uncomfortable. It's just easier to numb them or erase them.
You have different examples in your book about different personalities and careers. And I was surprised to find out that one of the people in there, a woman, Kara, she was treated, and her occupation wasn't known until a few times of treatment down the road. And I always thought that you found out what a person does first and then attack the problem.
Oh, well, no, actually, there's a lot of people in the book, and myself, like in the medical profession. I know doctors. Cara was a surgeon, and is still a surgeon and is still practicing, but doctors have a 14% addiction rate, whereas the general population has a 10%. So let that figure sink in, though. I mean, if we are roughly a country of 320 million people, 32 million people have alcohol problems or addiction problems. And so there's also the people that are under the radar. I was always under the radar. I never went to rehab. I never went to the doctor. There's no data on people like me who just realize, I had enough education about the disease, like I mentioned, from my mother. So when I saw myself sliding into it, I decided to quit. But what's sad in Caro's story is being a surgeon, and she goes back to the hospital after coming home from work, opening a bottle of wine yet again. This is what her drinking looked like. And then she would drink mostly the rest of the night. Highly functional, kids in good schools, well cared for, but she wasn't there. And there's a letter in the book from her daughter, Lucy, who was devastated by her mother was there, but you're not there. But Caro goes back to the hospital and tells her surgeon partners, hey, I think I have a drinking problem. And their reaction was one of incredulous disbelief that it couldn't be true. So there is such a breakdown in the medical community. They still, what I wrote about and what I talked about with my mother, the misdiagnosing, the doctors liberally putting people on all sorts of psych meds instead of diagnosing them with substance abuse. And I see that now. I still work a couple days in the psych ward. And it saddens me. I see it every day. These people are really there. 85% of what rolls into the psych ward is drug and alcohol related. Really? And the doctors continue to say, oh, they're depressed. Oh, they're psychotic. Oh. Well, maybe they're psychotic because they've been on a 4-day meth binge. That will make one crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that would make sense. So does the book, in order for it to be effective, does the reader, I should say, have to, I guess, just admit to himself or herself that they do have a problem? Is that always going to be necessary before the book actually helps?
No, I think the book actually is for people, for family members, maybe to understand someone, for anyone who drinks. The book is for, because a lot of times what I noticed was the problem is too many people don't really understand what early addiction can look like. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on the people that still have their jobs and their families, and some have a lot of wealth and whatnot, because people tend to think unless you're destitute on the street and you've lost it all, that you can't have a problem. And I wanted to dispel that myth. That is such a total myth, because most of the alcoholics that I know, they are educated, they are, right. They have families, they have jobs. So that's what I wanted to impart. So it's really for everybody. But before somebody is willing or is going to do anything about it, if they do have a drinking problem, is you have to admit that you have a drinking problem. So there's not much you can do for someone who stays in denial.
The book is called Raising the Bottom, Making Mindful Choices in a Drinking Culture. Lisa Boucher is our guest. If you're looking at the streaming video, I have a picture of the book and a picture of Lisa. And pretty lady you are. I can talk like Yoda for a second. Pretty lady.
Thank you.
But I want to, could somebody who has a spouse that is going through a problem actually get a little bit of a leverage, maybe just by looking at what you have to say in the book, and maybe approaching her husband or his wife with whatever information we learned from the book?
Absolutely, because it is a family disease. So I say alcoholism is the only disease that you're not only affecting the person who has it, but you affect at least 4 other people. So what happens when you have an alcoholic in the family is everyone is tiptoeing and dancing around that person to not upset them, or to not, make them upset if you call them out or whatnot. So I do talk about that, because the dynamics of it, it makes it a dysfunctional family is what happens. It's just impossible not to. So I can use my own experience. I mean, growing up with an alcoholic mother, my father was a rageaholic because he could not control her disease that was escalating at a rapid, wild rate. I mean, it is a montage of insanity, and some of it was tragic, and some of it is tragically funny, the stuff that she would do, and that we as kids had to contend with. I have 3 other siblings. So, but it gravely affected all of us have had addiction issues or food issues or some sort of addiction, and you cannot be raised in a family where you're not learning coping skills, where you don't have any adult who's teaching you anything. I mean, we basically raised ourselves, and you do the best you can, but it's not really good enough when it comes to dealing with life and dealing with adult situations. So thank God I sobered up, and I sobered up before I had my sons. I have twin boys. They're grown now, but I got to raise them very differently and teach them coping skills. Now, will my sons have the predisposition to addiction? They may. Will they become addicts? I don't know. They might become alcoholics later in life. They're in their late 20s now, but they were Division I athletes. They went to college. They finished college. They both are working. They're doing very well on their own. However, if they do cross the line down the road, at least I know that I taught them coping skills, and they know what recovery looks like. And for many people, they don't really know or understand what addiction and alcoholism can look like, and where to get help, and how to live life successfully without booze. Because the first thing everyone thinks of when you say you're going to quit drinking or whatever is, oh my God, I'll never have any fun. Right? Yeah. I mean, this is the mentality. And I have so much more fun not drinking.
So is having more fun, is that the carrot on the stick? Is that the goal that you are working towards? Because it's got to be rough. I mean, switching your lifestyle. What is the hardest part of that, by the way? What part of that process is the part where most people backslide?
Well, I think it's more early on. Here's the biggest hurdle for me, okay? And working with all of the women and even the men that I've talked to, the biggest hurdle for anyone is accepting that you have a drinking problem. So many people can have DUIs, they're on their 3rd marriage, they're on multiple jobs, they do geographical cures and move all over. They'll go to yoga, therapy, take all kind of meds from the doctor. They'll do anything but quit drinking because that seems so terrifying. So if that seems terrifying to you, it's probably your problem. Because someone who is not attached to alcohol is going to be indifferent. They don't care. If they feel bad, they'll be like, yeah, maybe I will stop drinking a depressant, because alcohol is a depressant. And so I say I don't understand people who run to the doctor and will take a handful of antidepressants, but they don't stop drinking a depressant, which is probably the reason for their depression.
Yeah.
Because I know many people that once they sober up, that they don't need antidepressants and they're no longer depressed. So that's number one. And number two is, like I said, my spouse still drinks. So our life very much in our 20s revolved around alcohol, where we were going, and we were out a lot. We didn't have our kids yet, very social. Everything revolved around alcohol. So when I quit drinking, there is that space of time, months, maybe a year, where you're like, my God, what do I do with myself? But what eventually happens is you start finding your gifts. I went back to school twice. I ended up writing books. Raising the Bottom is my 5th book. So I wrote fiction prior to that. Mm-hmm. So I found other things. I'm Italian, so I cook like crazy. I garden. I help other people. My life is so much more richer and fuller now sober, because really when I was drinking, I was working and going out. And that's a very narrow hallway, if you really think about it. Mm-hmm. And yet I thought I was having so much fun. Well, I'm having more fun now because I'm doing more things. I travel. I'm doing
that's awesome.
Things that I would not be doing if I was still drinking.
Will people that have this problem and they recognize they have a problem, are they good listeners? Will they listen to you, or will there still be some form of denial in their heart?
Well, I I think it depends how bad it is for him, or how bad my bottom was. An internal bottom. I was disintegrating internally. So I think if someone's listening right now and they've been struggling for a while, and they already know in the back of their mind that they have a drinking problem, they just don't want to accept it, it may be extremely helpful and push them over the edge to say, you know what, I'm done. Someone who's in the contemplative stages of toying with it, and they're still in deep denial, though, they're going to go on. It might plant another seed, and they may go on. I knew I was an alcoholic 2 years before I quit drinking. I would sit at the bar with my posse of friends and go, hey, y'all, do you think I drink too much? And you'd get a, hell no, can I say that from here? These are the kind of things we do. I was already thinking about it, but I was nowhere near ready to address it or accept it. And then 2 years later, though, when this is, you're cogitating about it for a number of years and you're aware of it. And then eventually when things you realize, it's just not working. I'm not that happy. And I'm drinking more than I'm doing anything else. And I'm sitting at work thinking about what I'm going to drink on the way home, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to buy, these kinds of things. When it becomes that mental obsession, I just knew I was sliding into extremely dangerous territory. And I was rather scared if I didn't stop then, I could have really ended up being in big trouble with it.
Lisa, what would you say to the person listening right now who is saying to themselves, you know what, she's talking to me, but I'll do it after the holidays? What do you say to that person who made up their mind, I think I'll stop after New Year's?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can just tell you this. I've known a lot of people that have said things like that and they don't make it to the new year, that they've ended up in a car accident or some other devastating mishap or a DUI or whatever. So I would say to them, if you really think that you have a problem and you need to quit, then just do it. I mean, there is no good time to get sober. Let's put it that way. I know a lot of people who have gotten sober, believe it or not, on New Year's Eve. I know people who have gotten sober on Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, whatever the case may be. I know my mother, she was January, I think it was the 2nd, because on early January, one of those holidays was when she had her accident, or maybe it was the 4th or whatever, but very early in January. So if you really think you need to quit, don't wait. There's never going to be an easy time. It is hard. It is difficult. And like I said, I think the hardest thing to accept is to get honest with yourself about your drinking. If you're people that carry it around in their purses and their cars, I mean, come on. You've crossed the line a long time ago. That's not normal. It's not normal if you're drinking 5 and 6 days a week. That's not really social drinking, but our culture has normalized alcoholism. So somebody can drink 7 days a week with impunity. People say, well, it's just social. Well, is that really social? Because the social drinkers that I know, they might only drink a couple times a month or on special occasions because they're busy having a life. And alcohol, they're indifferent to it. If it's there and they're at a party or something, they'll drink. Maybe they'll get drunk on Christmas or whatever. But it's not something they are buying. They're not out there buying cases of wine or alcohol. Their homes aren't stocked with these outrageous amount of alcohol because it's just not something that's that important to them.
So does an alcoholic who decides to not be an alcoholic anymore to have to stop completely, or can they actually be a social drinker, or are they the personality that it's always going to be one thing leads to the next and they're right back where they started from?
Right, absolutely. Well, let me put it this way. Once you are a cucumber, once you're a pickle, we never get to be cucumbers again. Mm-hmm. So,
exactly.
Once you're an alcoholic, right?
I love that.
Once you're a pickle, you can never go back to be a cucumber. That right there is a visual of alcoholism. So if you are someone your drinking is out of control, you are never going to be able to moderate it. And if you could moderate it, you wouldn't need to quit drinking.
There are observations in your book from the family member's perspective as to when the person was drinking and the alcoholic, they cleaned up their act and they're not an alcoholic anymore. They're more fun to be around. They're very helpful. They don't get ugly at their family members and yell at them. So I think that's an interesting part of your book also.
Well, it is. I mean, I've never known anyone who regretted getting sober. But I know so many people who regretted that they waited so long. And especially mothers, the guilt of realizing that when they sober up in their 40s or maybe 50s, it's really hard. And the pain of realizing like, wow, I missed my kids growing up. Because even though they were there, there's another story in the book, Fiona. She too was a doctor. And so her kids are, she's taking them to all the requisite sports and dentist and doctor's appointments. But she said it really hit her hard when she came back from rehab, and her 15-year-old was curled up in a ball on the couch bawling over some boyfriend. And she said, I had no idea she even had a boyfriend. So she wasn't really involved. And her daughter also wrote a letter. So I thought it was very important for people to see how children feel, because I don't feel that we give them a voice. I mean, if you really think about it, and I think this was a big part of my motivation in writing the book, and I do have a heart for children because I'm worked with them at the hospital, and I see how much of their issues are related to parenting, and much of the horrible parenting and what goes on is due to substance abuse in the home. And again, there's no demographics, whether it's an affluent home like some of the women that were in my book, or people in the inner city, that the children are still neglected. It doesn't really matter. It just might look a little different, but the feelings are the same, and these kids are struggling. And so I find it very selfish and incredibly sad that our culture encourages things like microbreweries and bring your kids. So you go into, I was on a radio show up in the northeast part of the country, and the host, she said it was pathetic. She said she goes out with her husband, and she said, I couldn't believe the number of toddlers, babies, strollers at the microbrewery. So what are we doing? Like, why have we normalized this? That you now bring your kids to go get drunk or drink and then drive them home. So we have lowered the bar so much. Or these moms that do these, get on Facebook. It's appalling that they're talking about getting together for play dates and bring the alcohol. And like, when is that okay? When is it okay to mix babies and booze?
Yeah, that's horrible. Horrible. Those aren't good moms when they do
sad.
that.
Very sad.
The stories, and I'm reading from one of the reviews. Somebody on Amazon said this: a must-read for all, but especially women and those who work in the medical profession. If you drink at all, please don't miss this book. And then she writes, the stories and anecdotes from so many women opened my eyes to the ways our culture encourages excessive drinking. I loved the stories, particularly from from moms, grandmothers, and doctors who were all equally affected by their drinking. So it sounds like what you've done is you've been able to do interviews with people who kind of went through the same thing you went through.
I did. And so I wanted other voices in the book. So there, in the back of the book, there are 10 other stories. And then there's little anecdotes all through so that people, like, let's say you can't relate to my story, but maybe you'll relate to another story. Or the gentleman, I have a few guys in there, the gentleman who is now a chemical dependency counselor, but he talks about his story. I also have the chief of staff who was chief of staff at a large hospital who landed in his own emergency room with a fentanyl patch in his mouth.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot. Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of stories. And again, I show the face of people that you really wouldn't suspect they had a problem because, again, they have jobs, they're educated. Yeah. And we've got to dispel this myth that you've got to be the person on the 6 o'clock news getting tased by the police or crashing your car into someone's house before you can have a problem.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so smart. Raising the Bottom is the name of the book. Lisa Boucher is the author. She actually sent us a copy and she signed it. So if I have somebody, if I have somebody out there who would like the one that she sent us, and it has a handsome bookmark in it too, nice little tassel on it. So call me at 622-9622, and I'll pick somebody at random and leave the book here for you. I found the book on Amazon. Lisa, do you have a website you'd like to direct us to?
I do, raisingthebottom.com. I'm also on Facebook at Raising the Bottom, and I'm on Twitter at Boucher Author.
All right, very good. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this and put you and the caller on here. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this? Hello? Maybe I don't know.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
Yeah, you got the book. Who's this?
Who's this?
Helen.
You got the book, Helen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, I hope I didn't cut you off. Lisa, you still there?
No, I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, good. Lisa, that one quick. I mean, you will not believe how that lit up. I can see why people are wanting this one. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being on the show. Have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too as well. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating. And I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Our pleasure and an honor. Thank you. All right, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, the Village.
This is a Fox News alert. I'm Lillian Wu. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi giving the green light to impeachment against President Trump.
Today, I'm asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment,
accusing the president of actions which have seriously violated the Constitution. Reaction on Twitter from the First Family.
Stephanie Grisham, spokesperson for the president and the First Lady, just put out this response. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats should be ashamed. The president has done nothing but lead our country, resulting in a booming economy, more jobs, and a stronger military, to name just a few of his major accomplishments. We look forward to a fair trial in the Senate.
Fox's Sandra Smith. This is the day after the House Judiciary Committee held its first impeachment hearing, where 3 out of 4 witnesses recommended impeachment. They were called by Democrats. The 4th, invited by Republicans, did not. And on Wall Street, stocks opening higher. America's listening to Fox News.
Ordinary bar soaps may do a good job of cleansing. Easy. Done and done. But with Dove, you get a whole lot more. Because every bar is made with 1/4 moisturizing cream. So you get a gentle clean that leaves skin feeling soft, smooth, and nourished. Upgrade to Dove, the bar that gives you more. It cleanses and cares. Plus, it's #1 recommended by dermatologists. Now that is money well spent. Dove, get more from your beauty bar.
I really thought I would die of stress long before the cancer, because the diagnosis brought this avalanche of worries. The money, the travel, the burden on the family. One night I called the American Cancer Society, and they helped me map out a plan. Got me free rides to chemo and even a free place to stay during treatment. They took away those other fears so I could rest up for the real fight.
Please give at cancer.org.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. Ocala officials have announced that insurance will cover more than $717,000 wrongfully paid to a scammer in October who claimed to be an account specialist with a construction company the city was working with. Discovery of a rabid raccoon in Summerfield has helped officials